When people imagine a millionaire, they usually picture a car you can hear before you see: low, loud, and expensive. But in many parking lots, the highest net worth person there might be driving a 10-year-old sedan, a reliable SUV with 120,000 miles, a pickup that's been paid off for years, something clean, maintained, and completely unremarkable. This isn't an accident. Vehicle choices are clearly reflected in spending patterns. High earners often upgrade quickly, but many financially independent households do the opposite. They keep cars longer, avoid large monthly payments, and let the difference flow into investments instead. Over time, that single habit can redirect hundreds of thousands of dollars away from depreciation and toward compounding. From the outside, it looks ordinary, but the math behind it isn't. So the real question isn't, what car do wealthy people buy? It's, what car do people choose when they no longer need to prove anything? In this video, we're going to look at the vehicles that appear again and again among financially secure households, not because they're flashy, but because they solve a different problem: reliability, low ongoing cost, and freedom from constant upgrading. And this isn't a car review. It's a behavior review, a look at how financial decisions quietly show up in everyday choices. To see what that looks like in practice, let's start with a car that rarely draws attention, but shows up surprisingly often in financially stable households. Toyota Avalon, comfort without the badge. The Toyota Avalon was the car people bought when they were done trying to impress anyone. It didn't scream success, it didn't even try, but under the surface, it quietly delivered near-luxury comfort at a price that made financial sense. In its final model year, it started around $36,800 and topped out in the low 40,000s. That's thousands less than comparable luxury sedans, yet you still get a smooth, quiet ride, a spacious interior, and the kind of reliability that keeps repair bills predictable, and predictability is underrated. When you understand long-term wealth, you stop chasing appearances and start protecting margins. Depreciation is where most new cars quietly drain cash. The Avalon softened that hit. Owners weren't paying extra for a badge, they were paying for engineering. And when a car runs well past 200,000 miles with basic maintenance, that changes the math entirely. Stretch the ownership period, lower the cost per mile, reinvest the difference. Small decisions compound. You'll often find these parked in neighborhoods where net worth doesn't match the driveway. Self-made business owners, consultants, franchise operators, people who understand that capital invested earns, while capital displayed depreciates. It looks ordinary in traffic. That's the point. And once you start noticing this pattern, practical comfort over prestige, you begin to see it repeated in another vehicle that's even more common and even more underestimated. Honda Accord, function over flash. The Honda Accord is one of those cars people stop noticing, and that invisibility is exactly why it works. The current generation starts around $28,000 and can reach roughly $40,000 in higher trims. For that money, you get a refined interior, strong fuel efficiency, and reliability that keeps ownership costs stable year after year. No surprise repairs, no dramatic maintenance spikes, just consistency. And consistency is a quiet wealth strategy. Insurance is reasonable, parts are widely available. Fuel economy often lands in the 30-plus miles per gallon range. Over 5 or 7 years, those differences matter, not emotionally and mathematically. When you reduce friction in your monthly expenses, you create breathing room. That breathing room turns into investable capital. What's interesting is who chooses it. You'll see Accords in hospital parking lots, law offices, tech campuses, people earning well into 6 figures, sometimes more, driving something that blends in next to everything else. That's not accidental. It's intentional restraint. Here's the subtle edge. When your lifestyle doesn't expand as fast as your income, the gap becomes power. The Accord supports that gap. It doesn't pressure you to upgrade your identity every 3 years. It's a car that does its job so well, you forget about it. And that frees up attention and money for bigger priorities. And once you start looking at practicality through that lens, the next vehicle takes it even further, trading pavement prestige for something more versatile altogether. Subaru Outback, capability without attention. The Subaru Outback doesn't look expensive. That's part of its appeal. The latest models start around $35,000 and climb into the high $40,000 depending on trim. Standard all-wheel drive, generous ground clearance, strong safety ratings. It handles snow, gravel roads, and long highway drives without needing to announce itself. You'll see them in ski resort parking lots, trailheads, and suburban driveways where household incomes are well into six figures. Not because they couldn't afford something flashier, but because this does the job better. When you value function, the image becomes secondary. Ownership costs are steady, insurance is reasonable, maintenance isn't exotic, and resale value tends to hold up well, especially in regions where weather matters. So that stability lowers long-term risk, quietly. There's also lifestyle alignment. If your weekends involve camping, biking, or hauling gear for kids' sports tournaments, the Outback fits seamlessly. No need for a separate, fun car. No need to signal success at a stoplight. Here's the interesting contrast. Some people upgrade cars to feel adventurous. Others choose capability first and let the adventure follow. That difference shows up in how money compounds over time. The Outback represents wealth that prioritizes flexibility. And when flexibility starts to include a more refined, almost luxury level experience, without crossing into obvious status, the conversation shifts towards something even more subtle. Lexus ES, whispered luxury. The Lexus ES is technically a luxury car, but unless you know what you're looking at, it doesn't demand attention. Pricing starts in the low $40,000 range and can move into the $50,000 range depending on trim and options. That puts it firmly in premium territory. Yet compared to similarly priced German sedans, ownership costs tend to be lower. Maintenance is more predictable. Repairs are less dramatic, and long-term reliability ratings consistently rank near the top. Inside, though, it feels first class. Quiet cabin, high-quality materials, smooth ride that filters out road noise and stress. It's the kind of car that makes long commutes easier without announcing to the world that you've arrived. That's the interesting dynamic. Some people buy luxury for visibility, and others buy it for comfort and keep the visibility low. The ES leans toward the second group. Depreciation also plays a role. While luxury cars typically lose value quickly, models known for reliability tend to hold up better over time. That difference can mean thousands saved over 5 to 7 years, quietly. You'll often see these in professional office parking lots, medical centers, corporate campuses, driven by people who could afford something louder, but don't see the upside. It's wealth that prefers insulation over impression. And when you move from quiet refinement to something that blends into culture itself, something that can cost over $70,000 without raising eyebrows, the dynamic shifts again. Ford F-150, practical power. The Ford F-150 doesn't look like a millionaire's vehicle. That's exactly why it works. A base model might start in the $30,000 range, but higher trims like Platinum or Limited can easily exceed $70,000. From the outside, though, most people can't tell the difference. In many regions, pickup trucks are everywhere. They blend into the culture. That invisibility matters. When a vehicle costing more than many luxury sedans doesn't draw attention, it becomes a tool, not a statement. And it is a serious tool. Towing capacity north of 10,000 pounds, spacious crew cab, advanced driver tech, heated and ventilated seats, even massaging seats and upper trims. It handles job sites during the week and dinner reservations on Friday night without switching cars. For business owners, contractors, ranch operators, and/or executives who actually use their trucks, it's practical capital. Instead of owning a flashy weekend car and a separate work vehicle, the F-150 consolidates function, fewer vehicles, lower complexity, sometimes even tax advantages, when legitimately used for business purposes. Fuel costs and insurance are real considerations, but buyers at this level factor that in. It's about utility and flexibility, not image. Here's the subtle contrast. Some vehicles perform luxury. Others perform work. The F-150 quietly does both. And when wealth starts prioritizing driving experience over branding altogether, the conversation shifts toward a compact SUV that surprises people who pay attention. Mazda CX-5, value over branding. The Mazda CX-5 sits in a crowded compact SUV segment. On paper, it competes with dozens of similar vehicles. In practice, it feels a class above. Starting around $30,000, it delivers an interior that wouldn't look out of place in something costing $10,000 or $15,000 more. Soft touch materials, clean design, solid handling. It doesn't rely on a prestige badge to justify its price. It relies on execution that matters to people who understand value versus cost. A higher price doesn't automatically mean higher quality, and some of the most financially disciplined buyers pay attention to that gap. Fuel economy stays competitive. Maintenance is manageable. Insurance isn't inflated by a luxury label. Over a 5-year ownership period, those factors compound quietly. You're not paying extra for perception. What's interesting is the mindset behind the choice. The CX-5 appeals to drivers who actually enjoy driving, but don't need social validation from it. They read reviews, they compare specs, they test drive alternatives, then they choose the one that delivers the best experience per dollar. Here's the subtle edge. When you stop equating luxury with branding, you start seeing options others overlook. The CX-5 reflects confidence and judgment rather than status. And when that same philosophy scales up into a premium SUV that still refuses to shout, you start entering a different category of understatement altogether. Volvo XC60, Scandinavian restraint. The Volvo XC60 is clearly a premium SUV, but it doesn't perform like one in public. Pricing starts just above $50,000 and can move into the low $60,000 depending on trim. That puts it squarely in competition with well-known German luxury brands. Yet visually, it's calm, clean lines, minimal badging, no aggressive styling cues that demand attention. Inside, it's a different story. High-quality materials, thoughtful layout, a quiet cabin that feels insulated from chaos. Volvo's reputation for safety remains one of its strongest draws, especially for families who think long-term. Advanced driver assist systems aren't about status. They're about risk reduction. Maintenance and ownership costs tend to be more predictable than those of some European competitors. And depreciation, while real in any premium vehicle, often feels less punishing when the brand isn't built on rapid trend cycles. The appeal is subtle. It attracts buyers who value craftsmanship and restraint over flash. People who prefer a design that ages well, instead of chasing whatever looks dramatic this year. Here's the contrast. Some luxury SUVs are meant to signal arrival. The XC60 is designed to feel right for years. It's the financial equivalent of quality materials over trendy labels. And when practicality expands into 3-row family territory without losing that low-profile mindset, the dynamic shifts once again, this time towards space without spectacle. Honda Pilot, family practicality. The Honda Pilot is built for families who need space, not attention. Starting around $42,000 and reaching into the mid-50,000s in higher trims, it offers 3 rows of seating, strong safety scores, and dependable performance. It doesn't try to look aggressive or flashy. In a school pickup line, it blends in with everything else. That's part of the strategy. For affluent households, especially those juggling work, travel, sports, and weekend trips, the Pilot checks the right boxes. It carries 8 passengers comfortably. It handles road trips without drama, and Honda's long-term reliability reputation keeps maintenance predictable. Predictability lowers stress. When your vehicle isn't draining time or money unexpectedly, you free up attention for bigger decisions, investments, business growth, family priorities. Insurance costs stay reasonable compared to premium European 3-row SUVs. Fuel economy remains competitive for its size. Over several years, those differences add up quietly. Here's the subtle edge. Some families upgrade to luxury SUVs to reflect success. Others choose something capable enough to remove friction from daily life and invest the difference. The Pilot supports that second mindset. It's wealth focused on function, not impression. And when the conversation shifts from practical invisibility to something that's expensive but somehow still blends into certain neighborhoods, the pattern becomes even more interesting. Porsche Cayenne, contextual understatement. A Porsche usually turns heads. The Cayenne often doesn't. Starting around $90,000 before options, it's clearly expensive. Add performance packages or premium trims, and the number climbs quickly. Yet in certain neighborhoods, it blends in almost like a mid-size SUV from a mainstream brand. When everyone around you is driving something in the same range, it stops signaling anything. That context matters. The Cayenne combines real performance with practicality, strong resale value, solid handling for an SUV, usable back seats, decent cargo space. It's not a weekend-only toy. It can handle school runs and client meetings without feeling out of place. For entrepreneurs and executives, it becomes a one-car solution. Instead of a separate sports car and family SUV, the Cayenne consolidates both, and that reduces complexity, and sometimes depreciation across multiple vehicles. Here's the quiet shift. When a 6-figure vehicle doesn't feel extravagant in your environment, your benchmark changes. Not upward emotionally, but structurally. You start thinking in terms of utility and retention of value. not just purchase price. And interestingly, in other circles, a completely different vehicle has achieved the same invisibility, not because it's rare, but because it's everywhere. That's where the pattern takes a modern turn. Tesla Model 3, innovation over image. The Tesla Model 3 used to feel futuristic. Now it's almost invisible. Pricing typically ranges from the high 30,000s to the mid 50,000s, depending on version. That puts it within reach of upper middle income buyers, and well within reach of households with serious assets. But visually, a base version looks almost identical to a higher performance trim. From the outside, you can't easily tell what someone paid. That ambiguity matters. Operating costs are lower than those of many gas-powered luxury sedans. No oil changes, fewer moving parts. Electricity often costs less per mile than gasoline. Over several years, that difference compounds, especially for high-mileage drivers. There's also the tech factor. Over-the-air updates, advanced driver assistance, clean minimalist interior design. It appeals to people who value systems and efficiency over traditional luxury cues. Here's the subtle shift. For some buyers, the Model 3 is about environmental alignment. For others, it's about reducing long-term friction, both financial and logistical. And because it's so common in many areas, it doesn't scream wealth. In fact, its ubiquity has made it socially neutral. It's the modern version of blending in while still owning something technically advanced. Key takeaways. If you look at these vehicles side by side, the pattern becomes obvious. Wealth and visibility are not the same thing. In fact, they often move in opposite directions. Most of these cars are not cheap. Some cost more than $70,000 or even $90,000. The difference is not price, it's intention. They prioritize reliability, utility, resale value, and long-term ownership costs over social signaling. That shift changes how money compounds. The quietly wealthy don't need their driveway to validate their balance sheet. They understand depreciation. They understand opportunity cost. They know that capital tied up in an image rarely produces returns. More importantly, they design their lifestyle to reduce friction, lower maintenance drama, fewer financial surprises, less pressure to upgrade every 3 years, and that stability creates mental bandwidth and optionality. The real takeaway isn't which car to buy. It's how decisions reflect identity. Are purchases expanding freedom or just expanding perception? If you start noticing that distinction in vehicles, you'll begin seeing it everywhere else in financial life. And that's where the conversation gets deeper next time.